So first, we have who were the oldest members of your family that you knew personally, like grandparents?
Brother. The only grandparent I really knew was my mother's father, and his name was Thaddeus Mundy. I was very young, not sure of the age, so couldn't tell you much about him. Only what I've learned through family and history. He knew many languages. Okay, so yes. And his wife, which would have been my grandmother, died when my mother was 11 years old. And they lived in Helena, Montana.
Did your parents talk about any of their ancestors when you were growing up?
No, not really. That's why we don't really have a history. That's why we're trying to keep a history now.
Where did you grow up?
In Anaconda, Montana. I lived there for the first 21 years of my life.
How did your family come to live there?
My father came down from Canada, and he worked on the railroad for a while, and then he worked on what they call the smelter, which they produced copper and whatever, and that's my mother and father met in Anaconda, Montana.
What is your earliest childhood memory?
Let's see. Wow. Childhood memory. The only memory I have, I was like 10 years old, and that's when my youngest brother was born. And I wasn't too fond of him because he was a boy and I wanted to have a little sister, which I never got.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yes. So, and we spent many Christmases. I don't know what age I was, but we would, my sisters would play the piano and we would sing Christmas carols. So that was good times. Christmases were good at our house. We might not have had a lot, but we had good company.
What was your favorite thing to do for fun, like movies, go to the beach, etc.?
For fun? Let me see, what did I do for fun? Well, which is very odd for me, but as a child we went to the stadium where the ballpark was, so not that I was a fan of baseball, but I liked to get in the hot dogs. That was about so that's about it.
Who were your childhood heroes?
Gee, not sure I had any Hollywood heroes. Trying to think. No. I don't know. I'd have to say my oldest sister Ruthie, because she had a Chevy convertible, and one time I had to go to another city with Girl Scouts, and she drove us and thought nothing of it.
Carter.
So I would say she was a hero to come to my aid in need.
Why?
Were you ever mentioned in a newspaper?
Yes, playing softball. My team was, well, I don't know if we were in first place, but we won a lot of games because there was the team that I was on. There was the three of us that were really good players. This one, her name was Ricky Eklund. She played the catcher, and then Penny John played the pitcher, and I played first base. And not many people could get beyond us. And I said, as a matter of fact, one woman wanted to manage to get into first base and be safe, and so she knocked the wind right out of me. So that's how women could, well, girls were vicious even in those days.
What world events had the most impact on you when you were a child? Did any of them personally affect your family?
Well, you couldn't say they affected the family, but the one thing that I recall is when John F. Kennedy was shot in Dallas, Texas, and that was in 1963 when I graduated from high school. That really had an impact. It was just hard to believe a president of the United States could be shot in our country. So yes, that had, yeah, it made all of us sad. It was just not heard of in those days.
Describe a typical family dinner. Did you all eat together as a family? Who did the cooking and what were your favorite foods?
Okay, yes, we all sat at the table. There was 10 children and then my mother and father, and we all had a specific space at the table as who sat where. And let's see, the most favorite would be when we had birthdays. My mother always baked a cake, and so we celebrated it. I can't remember what kind of cake I liked, but I know my sister Ruthie had strawberry shortcake, and that's what my mother made. But when we had holiday dinners, my mother did all the cooking. She would cook for 2 to 3 days. She cooked and baked and all that. I knew that was something I didn't want to do. So, but yes, the holidays were nice.
Next question, how were holidays? Birthdays, Christmas, etc. celebrated in your family? Did your family have special traditions?
Yes, as I said, yeah, birthdays were always celebrated. Um, and we got the cake of our choice. But there were 5 of my brothers and sisters that were born in November, so they all had to celebrate together instead of individually.
How is the world today different from what it was like when you were a child?
Well, let me just say that today is like the Wild Wild West. Now, when I was a child, we didn't even worry about that. We didn't lock our doors. Very little crime. And the only thing that stood out is I remember in in elementary school we had what they called atomic bomb. What would you call it?
Drill?
Exercises, and so we actually hid under the bed, under the desk. And what I'm saying is, if atomic bomb hit, there would be no safe place to be. But how did we know? And that was something that was almost mandatory to do, something we had to learn.
Oh, slight error. I have to fix everything.
And while you're doing that, I'll finish my puzzle.
Okay, I fixed everything.
Okay, already. Okay.
I'm very speedy.
I guess so. Okay.
Who was the oldest relative you remember as a child? What do you remember about them?
The oldest relative, probably my Aunt Pat. She was my mother's, she was next to age to my mother. My mother was the oldest girl. Well, there were many children in my mother's family, but her four girls or sisters or whatever all moved to Anaconda, Montana. And I remember my Aunt Pat, she was a little ornery person. So what could I say? I can't really say anything good about her other than she was my mother's sister. And you had to respect her anyways.
What stories have come down to you about your parents, grandparents, or more distant ancestors?
Okay, about my parents. Other than, let's see. Well, one story I can tell you is that My father purchased a home for like $3,000. And actually, what happened was because in Anaconda, blacks were only allowed to be on a certain side of the, would you say, certain side of the tracks. And my father had bought a house that was not on that side of the tracks. And they actually wanted him out, and he had to get a lawyer, and he secured that house. So that was quite a fight that he had to do. But that's where we remained, all of us.
Are there any stories? Okay. Are there any stories about famous or infamous relatives in your family?
I don't know if we had any famous relatives. My mother did say, and she always called him a shirt-tail relative. Whatever that meant, I don't know. But it was Jack Lemmon. He was an actor.
When and how did you meet your spouse? What did you do on dates?
Okay, when I met my spouse, I took a train from Anaconda, Montana to Lansing, Michigan. And I met him, and it wasn't like love at first sight, because actually I thought he was too tall, because my ideal man was going to be 5'7", and then he talked a lot. And so I'm not sure I liked him at the very beginning, but evidently he grew on me, because we ended up getting married 3 years later, because I first met him when I was graduated from high school.
What was it like when you were proposed to? Where and when did it happen, and how did you feel?
I'm not sure he really proposed, now that I think about it. He just said, let's get married. And, well, the strangest thing is, and maybe it was kind of a proposal, because at 19, I had told him that if I didn't get married, I'd never get married. So he said, let's get married. And so that kind of threw me for a loop, and I talked to my mother and said about getting married. She said, oh, you're too young. So I came back and told him I was too young. But we did get married 2 years later.
Where and when did you get married?
We got married in September 24th, 1966 at Holy Cross Catholic Church. It had to be on a Saturday. And that was in Lansing, Michigan.
What memory stands out the most from your wedding day?
Let me see. Actually, as we were coming out of the church and they were throwing rice on us. So then I said, hey, this is what it's all about. That's about it.
How would you describe your spouse? What do you admire most about them?
Okay, how would I describe my husband? He's tall, and I've always said the reason why I married him was tall, so he could reach all the tall cabinets, and I wouldn't have to get a ladder. But he has taken very good care of his family, and he has always worked and supported us, and really didn't complain about the work and whatever. So we were his really number one concern, and that was important to me.
What do you believe is the key to a successful marriage?
Compromise and flexibility. That's about it. Yeah, that's about it.
How did you find out that you were going to be a parent for the first time?
Well, it was kind of odd. I thought I had the flu, and I went in to see my doctor, and he decided to do a pregnancy test, and he told me I was pregnant. I was kind of shocked, but it kind of, you know, it's something that had to settle on me. I mean, we were barely married, and then here I ended up pregnant.
Why or how did you choose your children's names?
Okay, our first child was named after the father. I wanted Lawrence Kevin Davenport, and so when I got ready to deliver, my husband decided that it needed to have his name. And so in the beginning, we called him Lawrence Franklin Davenport II. And then later on, we changed it to Lawrence Davenport Jr. And then my second child, I actually thought I was having another boy, so I had a boy's name picked out. It happened to be a girl. So my husband decided to name her after a teacher that he had. Her name was Sister Anita. Or was it Annette? Well, anyhow. So that's how she became Anita. And then we named her Anita Michelle. And our last child, which was Anthony Davenport, my daughter named him because she wanted someone to have the same initials as her, because her brother had the same initials as the father. So that's how they were named. And I wanted Gabriel, but I never got to choose that one. Nobody wanted that one but me. Could you imagine your father being named Gabriel?
I don't want to think about it.
Well, he wouldn't either.
What was your proudest moment as a parent?
Watching my children graduate from college, because then it meant I didn't have to pay any more tuition. That was a blessing.
What did your family enjoy doing together?
Well, early on, when we only had children, we'd go to, we lived in San Diego, and they happened to have at the theme park there, it was Snow World in San Diego. And that was like, I don't know if that was during the summer or when it was. And we also used to go to Disneyland a lot. We had season tickets, so we went every year. But it was called, not Disneyland, it was Disney. Yeah, had to be Disneyland, yeah. So yes, we did that a lot. But then we moved from California and went elsewhere.
What accomplishments are you most proud of?
Let's see, accomplishments. Well, I would have to say my ability to sew many different things. First it was clothing, then it was something for the home, and teaching pillow classes. So it like did full circle on my sewing.
Of all the things you learned from your parents, what do you feel was the most valuable?
To do unto others as you would have them do to you, and whatever job you had, you do it the best. Whether you liked it or not, you always put forth that best effort. And also remain faithful to family. It was important that we always be there for one another, regardless.
What is the one thing you most want people to remember about you?
Let's see. Remember most about me. That I was kind and loving and understanding. That's about it.
All right. Yeah, that was the last question.